Hello everyone, welcome to Watch Complications. I'm Brian. This intro is just the basics. Subscribe if you haven't, ring the bell if you want updates. Follow me on Instagram at watch_complications and check out my website, watchcomplications.com. This is a new video in my Making Custom Dials series, and it's going to lead into some others that I've been planning for a while and said that were coming. Where I'm picking up in this series is I'm going to show you a very simple, basic example of starting to create a dial design and the software I use to create those. There are various options of what to do with that dial design. One I've shown you is pad printing, getting steel plates made, get the ink, pad printer, using a silicone pad to transfer then that design from plate to the dial blank. But the other options I want to show you and also experiment with and test out some are water slide decals. I want to test that on 3D printed dial blanks and then also transferring those to brass dial blanks. So what you got to do first is create an actual design. So just again, a quick, simple example, walk through that process. So here we go. Almost forgot the wrist check for today. The reason I'm doing this video now is because I have like 2 or 3 reviews coming up in a row, and I wanted to get another Making Custom Dials video out, do these review videos, and then I'll come back and do the water slide decal video. But today I'm wearing the Feynman 1 Eclipse model. This I've got in for review right now. I've had it on for about 3 or 4 days, and I'm gonna wear it a few more days, and then I will have a review. This watch has been around for a while. There are a lot of other reviews out there on it, and it was a Kickstarter a while back. But you know what? They asked if I would take a look at it, and I said, sure, why not? So that's coming too. But I'm actually really enjoying it. I actually really like this watch. Got my favorite complication, small seconds, and it's just a unique look, very different, and I really like the strap so far. But yeah, anyway, here we go. Let's get into some software and create a custom dial.
So obviously when it comes to creating a design, there are a lot of different software applications out there that you could use in which you could design your dial. The most important thing is that it has a vector-based format. It's important that it's vector-based because what that means is that it's not actually saving the, say, line as you draw it. It's saving the coordinates and the calculations necessary to draw that line. What's important about having the coordinates, the math, and the things behind the drawing of the objects on the dial is that you can scale up or down, or when you export, you change different aspects of the visual, they are still perfectly crisp. It's not like dealing with a bitmapped image where everything's based on pixels, or let's think of like a JPEG, which is very common photo or picture type, is that whenever you save a copy of it or whenever you zoom in or zoom out, you'll see different pixelation issues happen. It gets less clear, less crisp as you save it or you copy it or you change the size of it. That doesn't happen with vector images. So you need software that can do vector images. I use a very straightforward one that's not full of sort of bloated features and stuff. Just gets the job done with 2D graphics. It's called Graphic. Used to be called iDraw. This is for Mac OS. It's on the App Store. It's just under 30 bucks. It's sort of the best program I was able to find for Mac that can draw vector images. Yeah, there's some free stuff out there, but none of them are really great. There aren't other good ones for Mac. This was it. That's going to vary by platform. This is just to show you the process that I go through with creating a dial design that then I would use for either printing to, let's say, a water slide decal, or I could take these drawings and get clishes made for my pad printer, get the design cut in steel so that I can use my pad printer and ink to print and transfer the design to a dial blank. So what I want to do is just walk you through a very basic setup, draw some simple markers, and just kind of show you what that process looks like for me. So I usually like using the grid view. You can see, the squares, the coordinates and whatnot. I always work in millimeters. That's just the way the watch world is. And I'll usually set the canvas to something a little bit bigger than the dial. So let's say I was going to create a dial that was like 36.5 millimeter, for example. There's some preset custom sizes here, but what I want is something that's the size of about a dial. Okay, I'm going to open that up, and I've just got my sort of default canvas here with the size being the 38 by 38 square. Zoom in a little bit here, and it's really easier to use a trackpad or learn the keyboard shortcuts to interact in these environments. You can see the grid squares here are fairly large. Going to change that up, you can choose to show the grid or not show the grid. Snap to grid if you're going to put objects in it. I usually don't have that that turned on. And then we can also change the XY spacing. And what that'll do is that'll change, you can see the length width of the actual grids. We want to put these the same thing, so I'm going to do, a millimeter by a millimeter. Sometimes I'll do a half millimeter, something like that, and that sometimes makes it look a little bit better. But it's just, of course, just setup stuff. So there's half a millimeter. Now, first thing I would usually do is draw a circle that is the diameter of the dial that I'm going to have. So first I just draw the circle, and then I'm going to use the tool itself. Let's say I want this to be, linked. Obviously, you can do this with all sorts of shapes, but if we change one, we want it to be, impact the other. So if we scale up or down, that sort of thing. Let's say this dial is 36.5, okay? And you can do them individually like that, or now that they're the same size, link it. Those will change as I up one since they're equal. And let's see, let's move this to center. Of course, snap it to center. There we go. So that's the sort of the exterior. Of course, you can change things like the line weight. So let's select this. You can change the line weight, do different things. Let's go down to like 0.5 or something like that, so it's not quite so thick on the outside. And then we have something else I'll sometimes do is, we'll be cautious of, is the fill. Like this is currently entirely solid white. That may not be what you want. I might just want to print the exterior line, something like that. So you can change the fill on that if you would want to, and say, oh, I don't want any fill on that. That's just showing the border of my dial, right? It's not the actual design itself. Now, the next thing I'll usually do is I'll draw another circle at center. And depending on the watch you're designing, the center hole is going to be different sizes. Usually these are going to be somewhere between like 1.5 and 2.0. Like if you're doing a GMT movement, it might be a little bit bigger, like 2.0. Something like a 1.8 is a fairly common size for the center hole. So again, like 1.8. This currently has fill, but I don't want fill. This is again just indicating that there's a hole here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this thing to center as well. So if there's the center line, right, there's center. Let me zoom out just a hair. Line width to something else. Actually, change that to 0.5. Keep that about the same. All right, so there's my center hole. All right, look, I've got a dial blank. Now comes time to draw what you might think of as the actual dial surface. And remember, this is the edge of the dial. Usually a little bit of the dial is hidden by the inside of the case, the ledge that the dial sits on. And I'll usually represent that, with another ring. So let me draw this one up. Now, the size I want to set this at is going to depend on what size of dial needs to go in the case, and then what needs to be visible corresponds to the opening in the crystal in the case, so you can see the entire design. And let's just say it's about 1.2 millimeters less than the outside of the dial. So this thing's 36.5. So I'm going to want the design diameter to be 1.2 less than 36.5. So it's going to be 35.3. Okay. And then I'll do it here too, 35.3. And then let's move this thing again to center. You can see it's a little bit smaller. Again, I can take the fill off of this just for a second. Let me show you can see the center. Now with each of these individual layers, I could say, you know what, I want to bring this to the surface. So you can say, arrange. I want to bring this to the front. I want this sitting on top. For the exterior ring, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that all the way to the back. So I can, add things and they're not going to get in the way. This is all the way at the back. This is all the way at the top. And then I've got my design here. I'm going to add the fill back in. And now you can see my dial starting to really take shape. Again, this little sliver here is going to be sitting on the edge on the inside of the case. Okay, we don't want our design. Sometimes I design markers to go all the way to the edge, so there's no inconsistency, so you can do that too. Most of these applications also have you working in layers. You can see here's layer 1. You can put different things on different layers depending on what you're wanting. You can see each of the shapes. You can name each of these. You can turn them on or off. This helps a lot with viewing things visually. And again, these are features that are going to be similar mostly similar from application to application, but it will obviously vary both where they are in the toolbars, where you access them in the menus or shortcuts, but just showing you kind of what usually they'll look like. So we have different effects for each of the items, and then we have these layers in which we can put the different items. And what's nice is then you can, hide and show things depending on what you're wanting to see. I'll show you more about that here in a little bit. Now I'm going to show you something with Snap to Grid here. I'm going to draw a line, and you can see this will allow it to snap to these coordinates. It's usually not what I want, because they're usually not exact depending on the the different dial or whatever I'm working with. So that's why I usually don't have Snap to Grid on. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some points from center here, and it usually snaps to center. You can also see the degrees down there. So here's a line that's going to go from there to there. Again, just drawing at the length of the dial. And there, I'm going to draw one this direction. I'm going to draw one this direction and one this direction. So essentially having center here. And a lot of applications will automatically snap to center on objects, which is what's going on here. So now I've got my little crosshairs there. And reason I'm doing that is so that I can set markers where I want. Again, I'm just showing you really simple examples. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to wind this down a little bit. I'm going to draw, let's imagine I was drawing markers. Okay, of course you can do whatever shapes you want, but I'm going to draw a marker that's 270 degrees right here at center. Okay, I'm moving this just up a hair, and I'm going to move it right to the edge. You can see how it snapped to the top of that. Now what I'm going to do is I want to duplicate this around the dial face, my minute markers, right? So I'm going to select the item, and then I am going to do rotate here. See, center is currently the center of the line, but where I want to rotate is I want to rotate at center of the dial. Right, now what I want to do is set the angle to 6 degrees, because that's the amount of difference between each of the minute markers around the dial face, 6 degrees. And again, you could do the math, Anyway, so we're going to do a copy, and it's going to rotate this object around the point so that we've identified as center, which is the middle of the dial. I'm going to say copy. And look at this. I'm putting my minute markers all around the dial face. Yay. Like so. And then there we go. See, I've rotated that all the way around, and now I've got my minute markers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one at 12, and I am going to make, and you can see all these shapes got added. I'm going to make this bigger though. I'm going to make this 2 point now. I'm going to change the length. Let's say I change the length to 3, right? That want to indicate the hour versus the minute. There we go. Let me pull this one in a little bit. I'm going to pull these in from the side. Let's put that in here. Pull these down like so. You can extend that out however you want. I'm going to, you could rotate these as well, but I'm just going to make these, bigger, and say this is 3. I think that's what we made it. Yep. So let's do this one. We'll do this one at 2 point as well, and change its length to 3. You can see it moved it the other direction. That's okay. You can just move it back to the correct location. And let's make this one bigger. 2 and 3 as well. And moving this up. There we go. All right. So now we've got the basic design here. You could do, I'm going to do a copy here. So I got the second one there. I select this, and I'm going to shift this just right to the left a little bit. I'm going to move this one over here. Let's move these close to each other. All right, so I spaced those out of center, and you can see my basic design here taking shape. Again, I could, let's select this circle here, and I'm going to go back and add in my fill. You can start to see what that's looking like. Let me just delete these off so you can start to make sense of what this might look like, right? So basic, simple dial, and you could put in triangles, you could put in circles, you could put in other types of markers. so on and so forth. Okay, so what is I put the lines back in here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what, let's say I want hour markers at the other hours, not just 12, 3, 6, and 9. So I've selected the one here at 9, and I'm going to rotate that. Again, I'm going to choose center here for the rotate. There are 30 degrees between the hour markers, right? 6 times 5. And so I'm going to put this at 30 degrees and say copy. Copy that again, right? And this is going to just copy it over the top of the other ones, which is fine. But we can see what that looks like, right? So now, I mean, what I could do is I'm going to delete the ones, that are sitting on top of the others or whatever, or this one, the one in the middle there. And I think I actually did the second one there. Yeah. So now, again, these different shapes, right? I can turn them off and on if I want to see them. But just to do this quickly for you, let me just get them out of the way. You can start to see I've got my basic dial. Cool, right? Now, just an example, let me show you one of the projects you can look at on my website, which is Dual Time. And I drew it up in this program as well. And, using the different tools and stuff, you can see I've got layers for my hour markers, for the minute markers. If I want to see what the hands look like whenever I'm designing those, do I want my logo visible or not? Custom lines like this T2 for the dual time, see the hours or not. All kinds of cool ways you can visualize and build a dial as you go along. These light gray lines are the windows, the cutouts, so these aren't going to be printed. You can see the interior of the date cutout here, whereas this had a white border around the date window. See just a little difference between those. You can get the visual for the colors, what color I want the loom, see the different shapes for the loom locations. And of course, you can watch me go through the process of building this on my channel and on my blog, watchcomplications.com. So these are just little examples, right, of building basic dials in a program. One of the things I learned about this program the hard way was that when I export to a PDF or some vector format, I don't want to align strokes to the pixel grid. And so I turn that setting off for all of my drawings. And then whenever you want to, like, say, export this, either to say I want to print this, so it prints these minute markers to like a water slide decal, or if I want to take this design and I want to send it to my plate maker for my pad printer, then I would export to a format that is vector based. PSD, which is a Photoshop file, or what I usually do is PDF. And you can choose the scale, 100%, how many, pixels per inch, and all that sort of jazz. So let me just save this. I'm just going to call this dial. Let's just throw it on the desktop. Hit save. Here it is. There's my dial. Zoom in on that, and you'll notice what I want to show you here is PDF is a vector format. It's not like a JPEG where you zoom in, it's going to get, pixelated and whatnot. You can keep zooming in on this and those shapes are going to stay nice and crisp, clean lines, so on and so forth. Other things I might do if I was working on this for real is, moving these boxes up just a hair so that they are, no gap, no white space between here, that sort of little stuff. But again, this is just to show you a little bit of the process for how I will use this application, a vector-based application that does 2D graphics. Again, there are lots of different options. You can use Adobe products. This is a nice, inexpensive one and has the features I want. It's not bloated, it's simple, straightforward, and you can do just great designs in this program. So this is called Graphic, formerly iDraw. It's on the Mac App Store for less than 30 bucks.
As always, thanks for joining me. Watch for the next video in which we will take a design. I haven't picked a design. I might create something just unique for this project, which I probably will, or I'll choose one for a series that I've got in my head that I'm thinking about building prototype for, and we'll test this out on 3D printed dials and brass dial blanks with water slide decals with different variants of the actual printing paper. So that's coming up. As always, check out the website, watchcomplications.com. It's where everything is. Links to the videos, my projects, info on my Nano brand 10.6. If you want to subscribe there and get blog post updates, subscribe here and check me out on Instagram at watch_complications. I am Brian, and this is Watch Complications. Thanks, everybody.